Hi everyone, welcome to our channel. Welcome to this amazing series that is structured just for you. If you are an optometry student and you have subscribed to our platform and you're following us on our journey, do send us your information. We would love to help you out on your journey. Any questions that you may have, we are here to help you. Optometry school can be a very daunting course or journey, and so we are here to help. We're super passionate about students in eye care because we believe that eye care is one of those professions that optometry is one of those professions that truly is phenomenal. The impact we make in society is out of this world, and any way in which we are able to assist you along your journey, we are more than willing to help. And in actual fact, not only us, but our network. We are connected with mentors and leaders who have achieved extraordinary exploits over the years, people who are doing groundbreaking work, trailblazers, key opinion leaders who are reshaping the eye care industry on a global stage. And so do connect with us. We would love to come and add value in your professional career so that you, as the next generation of eye care leaders, can take the industry to a whole nother level. But anyway, for today's topic, it's all about shadowing and the impact of what happens to your career, your perspective, when you understand how important it is for you to be shadowing someone, especially earlier on in your career. So let's track back. This is now 2003. I was in high school, my last year of high school. My career was set on the fact that I was going to become a professional soccer player because I was literally the best soccer player. I'm fully convinced that no one could play soccer the way I could play soccer. And unfortunately, April of that year, I broke my ankle in a horrific soccer accident, and the doctors told me that I will never be able to play soccer again. Luckily, the school that I was in prioritized the academic program more than it did the sports program. And so my academic marks were slightly above average, but I was not getting A's or B's, but I was pretty much getting C's. And thank goodness for that, because then I had to face the decision of what next pertaining to my career, because the following year I was going to go to university, and what was I going to study at university if all along I've been focusing on my soccer? Fast track, I then decided I love healthcare related courses or subjects, if I can put it that way. And so for me to then decide on which career I'm going to focus on, I had to then spend enough time shadowing people within the healthcare industry in terms of getting a better understanding of what the career is like, what the industry is like, and is it something that I will be able to do long term. So I spent 2 weeks with an optometrist, 2 weeks with a physiotherapist, 2 weeks with a dentist, 2 weeks with a general practitioner, 2 weeks with ophthalmologist, 2 weeks with a different healthcare specialists, if I can put it, or professionals, if I can put it that way. And one thing that stood out for me was, of course, the optometrist. And then I added another 2 weeks with the optometrist, asking him questions. And then they recommended that I see another colleague of theirs, who was operating a different practice model than the one that the first optometrist that I saw was doing. And so I finally then made the decision that I'm going to apply to optometry school, and that's how the journey into eye care began for me personally. When I got to optometry school, because of that added advantage of having shadowed an optometrist in my final year of high school, I had already asked a few questions pertaining to the journey of an optometry student from first year to final year. I already had context of how long the course is, what subjects you're going to be taking, and the trajectory of your journey in optometry school. What does that look like? One thing that stood out for me was that there wasn't a need, if I can put it that way, a need or a necessity or a requirement, actually, that's the word I'm looking for. There wasn't a requirement for students to be working in optometric practices from their first year. And of course, with me, when everyone goes left, I tend to go right. If everyone goes right, I tend to go left. So I was working in my first year of optometry school. On weekends, I'm from Bloemfontein. It's a small city in the heart of South Africa. And there's an optometry school there at the University of the Free State. Incredible program, incredible lectures. And if you are considering going to optometry school, I highly recommend you think about University of the Free State Optometry School, because the program is absolutely world class. Anyway, I decided that I'm going to work in the local practices on weekends. And luckily, I was fortunate enough to have 2 optometric practices that opened their doors for me. I never got paid for this, but every alternate weekend or every weekend, I worked in either or of the 2 optometric practices. One was in the location, and it was a private practice in the location. The owner had only 1 optometric practice, very small practice with 1 staff member, and it was in a medical center. So there was a GP as well in the medical center. In actual fact, multiple GPs in that small medical center with the optometrist. So the business model was completely different as compared to the one in the CBD, in the city CBD, which was a slightly bigger optometric practice. And the business owner had 3 or 4 other practices in different parts of the province. And in this particular one that I was working in on weekends, as a student, all I did was pack files, help patients with what information that they needed, answer the telephone. That's all I did. There was nothing else that I did in that first year, but I learned the importance of shadowing someone. And so on this weekend, I was shadowing this particular business owner with his type of practice, asking him questions, asking to sit in with them when they are busy testing patients' eyes. And I would come in there with a notebook and of course a pen, and I would just write notes every single time in terms of how long they're taking to test the patient's eyes, what procedures they were doing. Because at that stage in first year, we had not had the chance to be exposed to such work because it was still too early for us to be in clinics at the time. And then the following weekend, I was spending time with the other business owner who had a laboratory at his practice, who had 3 or 4 staff members as compared to the other one who just had the 1, and it was part of a medical center. And same thing, always asking questions in terms of what this one does that was different from the other one. So if I see something happening at the one practice, I will go back the following week to the other practice owner and ask him, how do you do this? Why is it that you're not doing this? How come your test time is this way compared to the other one who was doing things a bit differently? I was always observing how they're dealing with staff members. The other one did not have a lot of staff issues, whereas this one had a lot of dynamics that were involved in staff. So how human resources worked in the one practice was completely different to how it worked in the other practice. This was important for me because it helped shape how I'm going to be approaching clinical work once we start doing clinical work at the university, right? And guess what happened? I felt like, okay, Bloemfontein at the end of the day is a small town. What these 2 individuals are doing in their practices might be different perhaps to what's happening in other practices. So come the holidays, I then decided to look at which family members I have in other provinces or cities in South Africa, or which friends do I have that stay in different towns or cities than where I was staying. And luckily, I had family and friends that were staying in Johannesburg, which is one of the biggest cities on the African continent. And I would go to Johannesburg every single holiday in my first year, working for one of the franchise type of practices, which was completely different from the 2 types of optometric practices that I was working in on weekends back in Bloemfontein. So this broadened my perspective even bigger, because the franchise group, their business model and practice modality was completely different from the practice modality and business models of the other 2. There was about 80 to 100 practices that belong to this franchise group, whereas the one practice had three to five practices, whereas the one had one. So same thing, notebook. All I did was pack files. I learned about, wait a minute, at varsity we're learning about all this clinical work and all this academic work. When do you find the time to implement it in practice? And so my thinking changed, and I already could see what to expect once I finished optometry school. I could already see the type of practice environment I was more inclined to want to work in as compared to what I don't want to work in. I looked at the type of optometry competency skills I would want to develop more. Even though first year you know absolutely nothing, your mind is all over the place, you are overwhelmed by having to change from high school to university. So that was happening all at the same time. And guess what happened fast forward, when I get to second year and I work in more practices, and I changed. Every holiday, I would look for a different practice. And when I came back to Bloom during the school term, on weekends, I would want to work in more different practices. If there were practices that I did not have the opportunity to work in, I would then want to go and spend time on a Tuesday afternoon if there was nothing happening, or on a Friday afternoon when varsity classes finish earlier. I would want to go and spend time in those practices. And what was an advantage is that we had the permanent staff members at the University of the Free State, but we also had the external staff members or guest lecturers. And what I mean by that is that some of the lecturers that were at the university had private practices or franchise practices in the city. So the information that they brought to the practice was both a combination of what happens at their practices versus what we had to know in the academic environment. And so I was constantly asking questions. And I discovered that when we get to second year and I'm coming to Johannesburg, now I realize that sales reps play a particular role. Because in the first year I was just marveling everything that was happening. But in my second year, I got to discover that, sales reps are the ones that are coming in, bringing in all these products. The optometrist works with certain suppliers and not necessarily all the suppliers. So I started learning about the administrative stuff. I started learning about how the relationships with suppliers work. I started looking at the relationships with service providers. And this was right in my second year. And I'm constantly having this notebook that I'm taking with me everywhere I'm going, being exposed to different types of business leaders, different types of practices, different types of working environments. And I realized things like the importance of location, the importance of understanding that the community your practice is in plays a role in terms of the type of optometric practice that will be best suited in that particular community, plays a role in terms of the type of optometric services and clinical competency requirements that will be needed to best serve the community. And so that was second year. Third year, and by the way, in first year already, I also started attending optometry conferences. The first one I remember was the South African Optometric Conference that took place in Johannesburg as well. And I attended this conference with one of my friends, Shireen, who was also a student in the same class as us. And we're the only students at this particular conference. And so we realized the impact of conferences, events, that you've got the big conferences, you've got the smaller seminars, you've got the different types of workshops, you've got key opinion leaders in the industry, people who are known to be those contact lens specialists, people who are known to be the pediatric specialists, the low vision specialists. This is not stuff that is taught at university because you don't have access to these phenomenal leaders who are reshaping the industry and who everyone, irrespective of where they are located, know these people. And so it gave me an opportunity, as well as Shireen, to then shadow these people as well and ask them questions. How did you get to the level where you are recognized as an influencer, where you are recognized as a key opinion leader, where you are recognized as a speaker within the industry? And what journey did you have to take to become a speaker versus the journey that someone else is taking who is not recognized across the country in your manner. And so that type of exposure, when you are shadowing someone, can reshape your journey so that you're not waiting until final year optometry school to realize that, oh, where am I going to work? Once you already are clear on all the different dynamics that are involved in optometry as a whole, as an industry, all the different types of individuals that are recognized in the country, on the continent, or in the world as leaders of industry pertaining to various subject matters, then the earlier on you have that information, the better it is for you to say, I want to do patient care that way. I want to have an optometry practice that is this way. I want to be working in an environment that is that way. Imagine if you're in second year and you discover that I've got an interest in pediatrics, or I've got an interest in myopia control. Then you shape your journey along that route so that the time you qualify, you already know what's at stake in terms of what will be involved when you're going and opening up your optometry practice, the type of optometry practices that are available that would be willing to hire you as a junior optometrist within their working environment. So if you're only waiting until you get to final year to make that call, to say, oh, okay, I need to work in an optometry practice. Oh, I'm looking for work. I'm graduating in 2 months' time. That is too late. You're only going to be learning a lot of stuff only when you get into the practices. And there's a high probability that because of poor planning, because of that clarity and vision that you had from earlier on in your optometric journey in optometric school, you will find that optometry is not what you thought it will be. And you don't want that to happen. The sooner you get into the necessary program, the sooner you know that this is the type of optometric practice I want to have one day, the easier it becomes for you to mitigate against any potential challenges, any potential obstacles, and you can bypass a lot of the mistakes that a person who has gone through the journey that you're aspiring to go through has already done. You would have met 5 or 6 different people in your area of interest that you would have spoken to, spent time with, learned from, and identified where you can be able to go further than what they have done. So that's basically what I would advise you today, because I wish I did more of that. Because as much as I did all the shadowing, I was all over the place in doing it. For me, I did it not on the reasons why I'm telling you must doing it. I was doing it on the basis that I was a slow learner. So I wanted an outside input or an outside perspective to help me with my internal environment that I was in, so that I can fast track my optometric journey, because I was a very, very slow learner. And so I had to create an environment in which I can be able to keep up with the students in my class. And I realized that the only way I can be able to do that was if I can see what will life look like as an optometrist once I qualify. And then once I had that as a view, as a vision, I was able to bring that forward and say, this is the journey I want to go through, and this is what it will take for me to then get to that journey. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you're not shadowing someone and you say, you're watching this and you're already in third year optometry school, or you're in final year optometry school, you guys have an advantage of you can Google stuff. Guess what? When I was in optometry school, I was using a phone. I won't mention the brand, but my phone, you would have to flip it. And there were no smartphones back in the day. I guess I'm revealing my age. But there were no smartphones back in the day. You would have to sit behind a computer or a laptop in order to Google the necessary information. And even back then, you would not even know what you need to be Googling. So you guys had an advantage in the sense that it might be you who's in third year or final year already, and you need to make that call. Go online, go onto different social media platforms, reach out to different leaders, because the only way my generation was able to meet leaders was when you are attending conferences. And that's when you would realize that, this is the who's who in the zone. Whereas with you guys, all the leaders are available. All the leaders are easily accessible. You just have to be dedicated and committed enough to reach out to them, and they will be more than willing to be available. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to subscribe. We're here to help you, and do connect with us on the different social media platforms. and we would love to hear from you with regards how we are able to assist you in your optometric journey. See you on the next episode. Take care, everybody.